Hey there, I'm Kenny Jang,
And I'm Richard Lee.
and we are here today just continuing that conversation about church giving, generosity, and what's just going on in the church today, right, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about all of the churches across America that are really operating through the generosity, on the shoulders of the generosity of all of the people that attend, it's amazing that we're not talking about this more.
Yeah, and it actually begs the question in my mind, and I guess we'll get to this at some point later, that since the landscape has changed so much in how people give and how much people are giving, it just begs the question, is the offering plate a sustainable model for the church in the future?
Yeah, it's interesting as you think about the different modes of how the churches actually are, quote unquote, passing the plate. Whether, even that phrase, passing a plate. Now, so many churches have, you can mail in your gift, or you can go online and give your gift, or you can actually automate your gift online. And so, in some ways, they're actually not participating regularly in that, in because it's passive giving through automated online giving.
Yeah, and even there, I think that's an interesting question, right? Um, are we acknowledging those givers that are not doing that in physical form, in person, in real time during the service? I've actually visited a church in Pennsylvania recently where I think I showed you they had a blue cardboard card, and the whole purpose was just to have something physical to put into the basket so you didn't feel left out or you weren't shamed by everyone down the aisle because you're just passing the plate without putting
Right.
anything in it.
Does
Just
the card say, "Don't judge me. I already gave"?
exactly. But what happens when the majority of people are just passing the plate down and nothing is put into it on that Sunday, during the service?
I think it goes back so much to the importance of the messaging from the stage, of acknowledging that there's so many different ways that you can give and be able to interact with the church in terms of giving and generosity. So I think the messaging is super important.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that is important to take note of, and I don't have the empirical data, but I think if we actually dove into it, we would find this phenomenon. Typically in church, the average church gift, I think Tony Morgan Live actually had a great piece on his site recently of all the churches that they've worked with. Their average gifts range was somewhere between $35 and $57, and the median gift was $41 per person. So
Per year.
no, per not $41 per year, $41 per person each service,
Yeah.
and it just goes back to that phrase that some churches have is like, there are church tippers and church givers, right? So just that many people, quite frankly, they don't prepare in advance before they get out of the house and go to church, right? They actually end up just pulling out their wallet or their purse and they give out of whatever's left over, whatever change they might have. It might be a $10 bill, a $20 bill. And in such a movement toward a cashless society, what's happening to that? And I think overall that what you're seeing is, church giving is declining because we don't have those tippers anymore.
Well, I mean, think about it. How often do you go out to a restaurant or go out to a shopping store, Target or Walmart or Costco and pay with cash? So people aren't carrying cash in their wallet anymore. I know I barely carry cash at any time. And so the model of people going to church and really, in a sense, out of a sense of, devotion, emptying their wallet.
So
Well, the
true.
fact of the matter is that less people are carrying cash in their wallets. And so, if the normal mode for them to be able to pay is through their credit card, how is the church able to sort of reach them the way that they are paying?
Yeah, but I think I can think of two big pieces of friction, right, of why churches haven't adopted credit card giving. One is just technology, right? It's just it's
Sure.
cumbersome or it's hard or just it's just not something that they're inclined to do. And two, it's just this. I think credit card, especially in this country, has been labeled as the great evil, right? Debt is
Right.
something that most families have to deal with. And so, what do you do? Is the church going to contribute to that or not? And I think that's one of the reasons why. And the question is that a valid response?
Well, there's a little bit of a moral conundrum there because you don't want to build the church off the backs of, throwing your parishioners further into debt.
Yes.
And
Yes.
your gifts to God, you don't want to have to be charged an annual percentage rate interest on your gift to God. And so there is a moral sort of conundrum. I think that there is there in terms of credit cards. However, I do think that the church needs to be able to engage into that conversation. And I don't think that that's a reason not to have the conversation. I think, in fact, that is the reason why we need to have the conversation. Because I tell you what, people are using their credit cards. And so if the church doesn't speak and reach them through the modes that they're used to, then we're going to be left behind.
Yeah,
And we're going to be
exactly.
left with $41 a week.
Yeah. In fact, Tony Morgan on his site in the article was talking about one of the great needs of, the best practices for churches that are thriving and have generosity overflowing through their offering plate. One of them is talking about stewardship, and not just once or twice a year, but in a series, in a sustained manner over a couple of weeks, at least once a year, have a series talking about that. But the other one also was talking about personal finance ministry, helping those in trouble,
Yeah.
in debt, to get out of it. And to see that as a responsibility of the church is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, I, how can we as pastors, how can we as Christians, how can we in the American church think that money is such a huge influence on people's lives, not only just their physical lives, but their spiritual lives,
Exactly.
and how can we not allow the church to give spiritual and practical and wise instruction into that area of their life?
Yeah, and so I think that's interesting to see what people here listening to this today feel. Is it out of bounds for the church to talk about personal finances and money and how you conduct yourselves and budgeting, etc.? There are large ministries out there like Dave Ramsey, right, with their Financial Peace University. It's been very successful in many ways, targeting that kind of thing. There's other ministries and programs out there, but a lot of churches and a lot of people think that's out of bounds. So I'd love to see in comments of what people think. Is the pastor supposed to be leading the flock in this area of their life as well?
The interesting thing is, I think there are probably a lot of pastors there are probably more pastors that may want to speak into this, but actually don't feel qualified, don't feel that they have either the expertise or whether they don't have the financial wherewithal to be able to have the credibility to speak into this. And so it's a difficult sort of transition there, I think, for the pastors to kind of get their mind around.
Yeah, and then there's a big downside, right? Like, so we know that it's commonly you throw out the 10% number for tithing, etc. You looked up some numbers recently about the average
Yeah,
family giving in this country, right?
that's right. In 2011, according to ChurchMag, um, in 2011, the average Christian gave 2.3% of their income, and
Wow.
that seems a little bit low. And to put it even further into perspective, during the Great Depression, Christians were putting 3.3% of their income into the offering plate. And so, that's some alarming sort of statistics that people who were going through the greatest depression this country has known were actually giving 33%, basically 33% more than what Christians are giving today. And I think even more troubling is the fact that 33 to 50% of Christians say they give nothing at all.
That's another huge statistic. Like, there's a lot of people who go to church and just don't give, right? I think it's a big assumption that you're passing the offering plate. Most people give. There are these tippers even that just will empty their pockets of change and a couple dollars. But there's actually double digit huge numbers who don't give. And our pastors in our churches really communicating and connecting the dots that giving is a part of the spiritual discipline, right? It's not just a fee for service type of thing.
Right. And I think that there are a whole bunch of pastors. If any pastors are out there listening, watching, you know who you are. There are pastors that will not cross the financial line. They refuse to talk about money. They feel very skittish talking about money. Maybe they preach one offering message, tithing message a year, or maybe they use it as an illustration. But if the church is not able to speak about it honestly and openly, and with a clear conscience, then we're going to leave our parishioners behind. And the fact of the matter is, if we believe that devotion to God will reflect itself in their finances, but we're not speaking about that, then we're actually robbing our congregations of devotion to God because we refuse to talk about it.
Yeah, that's well said. Well said. I think this is what interests both of us in taking this journey together over the next several months or a year to really try to get to the root of this, or actually discover the stories of the ministries and the leaders that are doing it well. And what's the key differentiators, right? What are they doing differently than those that are not, right? And there's the Giving Rocket survey that I think is well known, that 86% of churches are either at or under budget. 86% of churches are at or under budget. Only 14% of churches out there have extra money to have margin to actually respond to needs. So
that's amazing.
What are those 14% doing well? And what are they doing differently, right? So I'm excited to go on this journey to really explore this and meet some other people and see what they're doing differently.
Yeah. If you're listening, you're watching, and you have, I'm sure you have all these sort of thoughts and interactions. We'd love to be able to just hear from you. Like, what's working for you? What's something that you mentioned in a sermon that worked, or tell us why you're afraid to, talk about it. Because this is, what the journey that we're on is, just trying to learn and trying to listen and trying to understand this landscape, because we want to start the conversation because it's so important, so vital to the churches today.
Yeah, right. Time is, and I just feel that urgency, right? That the culture is shifting so quickly, especially going to this cashless society, and all these questions need to be asked as the church as a whole, because it definitely will impact the future, what makeup of what church is going to look like, right? The money fuels the resources and the capacity of the church and the capacity of it to do what it's supposed to do. On Twitter, you guys can reach me at Kenny Jang. We'll put it on the screen right here. Rich, what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is Rich J. Lee, RichJlee.
And we'd love to hear from you. Just those questions, those fears, your opinions. Shout at us. Tell us what we're doing right or what we're doing wrong. What questions are we asking well, and where we should be staying away from.
Yeah, and we're coming off strong and saying, we have to talk about this. But particularly those of you who are hesitant to talk about this, we'd love to hear the real reasons why, because we obviously feel strongly about this, that we would sit down and in front of our computers and be able to have a conversation about this. But I know that these are real issues. It's not just something that you're taking lightly, and so I'd love to hear from you. People that agree, but also people, and maybe even more importantly, people that disagree.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear those opinions.
Yeah, because I think it's as long as we have a respectful conversation and great conversation partners, I think we can explore this topic together in a life-serving, authentic way that hopefully will be constructive to all the parties around the table.
Does that mean I have to be respectful to you?
Maybe, just a little bit.
That's not in the contract, Kenny. I didn't sign it.
Well, it's time to go. Well, that said, we are enjoying the conversation today, Richard. I'm hopeful that we'll get some comments to talk about in this next session that we have together. But till then, let's keep on looking at the stats and figures of the makeup of the country and what's going on in our church today.
Yeah, and if you guys have any interesting statistics, send them our way and we'll talk about them. Bye-bye.